This will be a long shot, a long shooting of t-shirts, and then I will do the bottles. I'm at Bobby's. He's allowing me to have these things here for a bit so I can get rid of everything slowly in storage because I can't keep it from all the Venice archives. So this will be basically t-shirts, etc. And I'll do the bottles from that I dug out of the canals in the Canal Ruination Project, 1992 to 1995. Here's an apron from the Brown Bagger restaurant. What years did I work there? Some years in the 80s, early 80s. Lisa. Yes. Save the Canals t-shirt. Martin Dimanche made this one. This shoot is on the 9th of April, 2022. This is made by Quan Changyan. A number of these are stained, but they're all clean. That one was about 1974, I think, that he might have done that shirt. This is an old, wonderful tank shirt. It's likely from 1928, etc. From road skates. My son, of course, was a spectacular, well, he's spectacular at many things, including dance, music, choreography, one of my favorite choreographers, and he did roller skating and equestrian, all kinds of horsemanship, etc. But he also was at road skates a lot. He's one of the people in the lineup in the Smithsonian in 1979. The photo that was taken for the Smithsonian on roller skating in Venice, along with quite a number of his friends. This is the back side of it. So that was 79. Here's a very toddler kind of young child lifeguard shirt from Venice at the Oceanfront Walk, which used to be the Oceanfront Walk. Here's one of Gil Borges's The Last Resort shirts. He did them in different sizes. 79. This was taken from his photo slide and then his painting and print of the arch bridge over the Eastern Canal. You'll notice how there's the trellis, so to speak, at the top, which it had, at least in my lifetime, since 65 here, and so did the Carroll Canal Arch Bridge. But the powers that be, among everything that they have done, made sure that those did not happen again. This is by Emily. You know, we started our first Venice Canal Festivals in 1969, the year after, in December 1968, for the Free Venice Beachhead newspaper, which is still free and unowned. I worked with it 27 years, actually. And then I tried again in 2000 for a few months. So Emily did this shirt. I think that she did it in 69 also. I, of course, did massive 8 months of organization for the Canal Festival and running it a great deal. Starting especially, I worked on it in 69, of course, but as 70 through 74. And then I let it go. I did massive events and benefits and 2 video documentaries on the collectives of the Free Venice Beachhead. And I'm the one that came up with the design for the t-shirts to have the new masthead. Who did that? What's his name? I'm gonna forget it now. And this was the original one. And of course the paper was for decades only black and white. Well, except when Ruth Galanter was being elected, and then somewhat for the 20th anniversary. My massive events, especially, and the two documentaries on the Beachhead 1 and Beachhead 2 on the collectives, were done in 1988, of course, because it was the 20th anniversary. And of course I did quite an article for the Beachhead that year. Well, here's the shirt that one had to wear at the Brown Bagger with the sleeve. It's spray painted decor. Another bigger one of the Beachhead t-shirts for the 20th. And its verso side. And yet another of Gil Borges's The Last Resort t-shirts. This is a bigger one. And this one's 74. He did them for some years. Here's one of the t-shirts of Save the Ducks, Restore the Canals, but of course the plan was never to restore the canals, nor save the ducks of the powers that be at all. Here's a shirt from the Downwind Lenny Canal Regatta, which was held on the July 4th time. Alan Blunt and Pitter and Marie, and Alan and Pitter being world-class sailors. And I'll show the back of it in a second here also. Of course, it was taken over by the powers that be decades later for their agendas, so to speak. Here's the back of that shirt for the Downwind Lenny Canal Regatta. This is 1984, this shirt. Here we have the Friends of the Venice Library, which of course is under the auspices of Los Angeles, which has been the demise of Venice. And this is the little logo in the front. We wish we had an actual library. I worked for 20 years for an actual library. So did a number of people. And we have the edifice that's there, which is not opera pro. I should mention that we had, we had a wonderful, wonderful library, the original one on California, which has become used for many other things. It even had a walk-in, so to speak, size fireplace, wonderful, wonderful oak tables, and real wonderful light of windows, and open meeting rooms and backyard area. At any rate, here's a sweep in 1986, and you can see the number of sponsors for the Venice Action Committee, which had several years in a row. I'll show the back of it. Here's the back of it. Oh, the new library, so to speak, opened, I think it was August 25th, 1995, but it was August 1995 on Venice Boulevard. But they've destroyed the basic building of the other one, especially, well, even outside, but especially inside, and the backyard areas, etc. This is the shirt for the 10th anniversary of Venice Community Housing Corporation, which I was extremely supportive of from before its beginning, and for a solid 25 and even 27 years, but it's not had priorities for Venice that I feel are proper for quite some time. It is quite an institution. Reshooting a number of these that I blew the shooting of completely for hours. The 9th of April. Today is the 24th of May. And here's one of the Venice Beach, California, It's the Real Thing shirts. Here, the Venice Canals Yacht Club, of course, of the powers that be. And of course, the entire area of these remaining canals was to be completely deep water and privatized with 4 stories, no walkways, 60 feet deep, and private entry entirely fenced, which is why I worked so hard to have the Venice Canals declared a landmark, although the person that actually did it on my 3rd or 4th attempt, but I worked with him, was Tom Moran, who did it nationally, statewide, and the city of Los Angeles on the 15th of July, 1983. Okay, I'm going to pause this now. Oh, this is a Ray Packard t-shirt. Here's the Venice Beach House t-shirt, the bed and breakfast at Speedway, just north of Washington Street, north of the pier area. Here's Susie's old Venice Canals, Los Angeles cap. Of course, the Venice Canals Association, VCA, which is a high powers that be. It's enough said. Had Joe in Venice, a big business now and for decades in Venice, with various t-shirts. Sandpiper in Playa del Rey, California. There's a little sandpiper thing on the front also, this little t-shirt. The 10th anniversary of Jazz at Palms Court. So it was 1988 that Jazz at Palms Court was functionally a non-profit. No, not Jazz at Venice Community Housing Corporation. And Jazz at Palms Court began 4 years later. And was held at Palms Court, the old motor court, collectively owned housing, until it's through the 25th anniversary. Topanga Canyon Ranch. And this shirt is, I think, from 74, when David was also, I took him up to the Cory Walker horse ranch, but this is Max and Jeannie's place. It's massive, and of course the horses there are integral to the entire ranch area in Topanga. Just for fun, here's an Italy Venice shirt from Susie's life, because she left us in 2020. This is 2022. These 2 shirts, there will be 2 here, from Russell Clark, who, as I've mentioned perhaps before, left this world so early. Unbelievable, beyond imagination. I will show the verso of that in a minute. Here's an earlier shirt of his, and he had lived in Europe for a long time, the son of a great woman, and also his father and uncle were a famous dancing team back east. He studied in Europe a lot also, and he always claimed that Molly Malone in Paris was the best dancer he ever knew and the best teacher he ever knew. As far as I'm concerned, he was the best of both, but I did not know her. And he came back and taught and danced Room to Move at 312. Is it 312? Venice Way, which of course was the first post office in Venice, and Julie and her husband lived in that place, which has now been fortressed and changed, etc. And he taught many places, including the Coronet, and the Void Studio at 19th and Broadway. Various different theaters. I'm going to forget some of the places other. Oh, the yoga place on Main Street at Pacific, between Pacific and Strand, I think it was. Many places. Here's the 50th anniversary t-shirt. Well, I haven't opened it up completely. From the Ash Grove. So it was 1958 when I think he actually started it, but it was 59 when it has officially opened on Melrose in Hollywood area. And I came to work with it 71 for sure. I think that was the Women's Festival year. It was burned 4 times by political arson fires. The 4th fire was rather that it couldn't stay there anymore, and then did decades of concerts with Ed Pearls, Ash Grove, of course. But it's highly important to Venice and the world. Twice, so to speak, in my working there, I mean, everything's volunteer, but I sat or escorted or something a few of the Rolling Stone fellows to their seats there. His brother Bernie Pearl is also highly involved with that, and Sherman Pearl, one of their other brothers, is also very important here in Venice, and as a poet and with Beyond Baroque, which of course George Drury Smith founded here in 1968, and he's still with us at 95 and over that. Well, 10th of March, 1927, so this is 2022. Sam Taylor, fabulous, unbelievable, wonderful, and played music for us for decades, and went back to New York, to Long Island area for his later years. And I was in contact with him for quite some time there, but not in recent years, and he may have left this planet. I forgot to shoot the back of the Ash Grove shirt for the 50th, which was held mostly, but it was at many places, but it was based at UCLA with many events. It was quite wonderful. And these are some of the major performers for the 50th at UCLA. And you'll notice it says at the bottom, and many more. Here's the t-shirt, the first t-shirt run, so to speak, from Pacific Resident Theater, which was founded mostly by people, many of whom lived here, but were up at San Francisco, the ACT, and came back down here and opened Pacific Resident Theater in 1985. And it has had for many years now 3 theater spaces, and after Wanda's death, after Laura's death in 2014, it took a little while, but it opened up the concert space in 705 Venice Boulevard. So it goes from 703 through 707 Venice Boulevard. For a while, it also was at one of the sections of 701 just before COVID, a couple of years. And of course, we're still in the COVID era, well, mostly because of the big business of it, but we won't go into that, where we have the youth program also. And I teach still my free, extremely pro bono, because that's my life, free seniors class, which is just still thriving, and everyone's wonderful. Bud Freeman's improvisation, a little t-shirt, a youth t-shirt. I'm going to flip it over here. Oh, no, that one. I have to do another one here. 24 Hours in the Life of Los Angeles t-shirt, yes. And let's see, Here we go. Take any day. They did this for some years. These are going to be 2 shirts from the Powerhouse Repertory Theater Company. I actually founded 4 theater companies long ago, and way before Pacific Resident Theater that I've come to work with. And of course I worked some years and through the deaths of Peggy Fiore and William Traylor at the Loft Studio for years. Beyond fabulous. I'll flip this one over. So I did 2 plays at the Powerhouse Theater just before I came to Pacific Resident Theater. That's the front of it, so to speak. And I'll show the back of this also. This was a play I did a part in, Becoming Walt Whitman. Obviously 1993. The back of it shows the cast. Yes, here it goes. Today's the 30th of April. I found 3 more shirts. And this is also of Peter Wallenstein. That's his last name, I think I remembered. So here's another t-shirt. And here are 2 others that I found. Venice Renaissance. And one that's not from Venice, but when I took my son to the Olympics in Montreal in 1976, we went to Nantucket on the way up. It was an incredible journey. The Olympics are nothing like on television. They are terrifyingly crowded, etc. But Montreal and the experience was quite fabulous. I'm going to shoot a banner also soon. I used to make canopies, actually, well, quilts also, but canopies like patchwork. I'm going to shoot one that's not that. Well, you'll see that this is after the Canal Ruination project of 1992 to 1995, and you can see that this is look how they spelled canals when we got this done in the kind of protest things. So this was done actually after that. But the powers that be have made the canals which have been saved, and I'm one of the people extremely who did that. But Tom Moran also, and other people. The Ash Grove, the canopy that I made for that stage on Melrose Avenue, the first Ash Grove, Ed Pearl told me after that 4th political arson burning of it, when then they had to close, the only color that was left other than ash and char was one little patch of the quilt that had, of course, burned and floated down on the ashes. When was that last fire? I think it was 73. It might have been 74. I can't remember right now. Today is the 13th of April, 2022. I'm continuing with the bottles dug out of the canals during the Canal Ruination project, 1992 to 1995, August, when they dried up the entire remaining canal system against every environmental thing that we fought for, etc. At any rate, this is one collection, one box of the bottles. There's 7-Up, there's a Crush, a Royal Crown Cola, I can't think what that one is, a few old Coke bottles, other bottles, 3 Pepsi bottles, a couple of Canada Dry bottles. These here are probably some kind of liquor bottles also, as the big brown one. And the guess it's a champagne or a wine, the dark one there. I don't know what that back one would have been. It obviously was a jar of something. Olives, maybe? I don't know. At any rate, I also wanted to add that the Topanga Canyon Ranch shirt was likely from 1974 or 1975. I also wanted to add that Russell Clark, among the studios that he taught at, I wanted to add he taught at a studio on Main Street in Ocean Park. I think it was at the corner of Pacific. So we worked there a lot also. But he first started and stayed with also the Room to Move fabulousness until that had to close. Here is the other box, the second box. These are the two boxes, of course, of the bottles that I didn't give to the so-called Venice Historical Society, among many other things I gave them. And they cut the neck of each bottle. I gave them 35 bottles, maybe 38. Among many other things I gave them. We won't go into the horrors of that entire organization. At any rate, there are a number of little, I guess, medicine bottles, looks like to me. These were dug out of Carroll Canal and Grand Canal in probably early '94 when they dried up the canals for the Canal Ruination Project. And they did more after that, of course, as usual. So, and these are obviously liquor bottles. Half pint, I think, is the small one there, and then a pint, maybe the full pint's there. Of course, the Baja Cantina cup. That cup is pretty, the original Baja Cantina. Pat McCartney's place. A Hires bottle and a 7-Up bottle. That's it for right now. Well, it's storage, and I've been clearing out pretty much, but there's 16 boxes I put in Bobby's garage for the, which he's allowed, which I have to deal with for months and months and months of documentation. The Argonauts and the Beachheads entirely collections, etc., plus immense amount of ephemera from 1967 and even before. And so the books have to go like mad, and more books and more books and more books, and tons of homeopathy and wonderful books. I've already given away 5,000 books, actually. More than that, 5,000 to the, what do you call it? The library alone, the so-called library, the so-called Venice Library, which we used to have a library, the original library, but anyway, there are many, many artifacts that I have on Venice, and tons, and I have the t-shirt collection of, 38, and of course the bottles that I dug out in 93, 94 in the Canal Ruination Project of the powers that be, and all the photographs, and lots of political archive situations, but in tons of art archives. At any rate, I can't afford the, storage anymore. So this was packed all the way to the ceiling before, massively so. And, here's the old lamp housing, an original one from the existing canals. And this is the same design that were in the original canals. The original canal, the original canals that remain are the ones that remained, but they weren't the first. They were the second set, and not built by Kinney, but by other men, Sherman and other men. Okay. What day is it? It is the 1st of April. And of course I slash my leg. No matter what I do, I slash myself every day. Is this the one that's the beachhead? Hold on. Let me see. No, not yet. I'll have to shoot it later. I'm in the garage at Bobby's on Carroll Canal. Again, it's the 28th of April. These are boxes of massive amounts, and sacks also. There are a number of sacks. There's just one there. Of the Argonauts from 1971 and the Beachheads from 1968, although I gave also a full set of the Beachheads to the Southern California Library for Social Research. In 2003, I gave them many political activist archives that year, and also in 2005 to bring it up to date for Venice's 100th anniversary, which of course was July of that year, and also my book. He's put other things here, but these are the boxes of the bottles that I shot the other day, etc. After I shot the t-shirts. So I'm going to edit these boxes and get out the ephemera also, because I've saved ephemera from 1967 in Venice hugely, not to mention my other personal stuffs and the arts and posters of all the festivals I did and all the events and exhibits and etc. One of these sacks also, one of them, although I have posters that go with it, but they're in the car, is a sack of the docent kind of things that were used, although I didn't have to use them because I knew it all then, but for the Bellona or Bayona, however you care to say it, wetlands, which I worked on from its beginning with the Friends of Bayona Wetlands to save, which has led to other savings of the remaining wetlands, and the canals were born of those wetlands, etc. I may add to this in a bit information about the ash grove again. Oh, it was in 58 or 59 when Ed Pearl opened it. That's for sure. There were other details about something about the shirts. I can't remember exactly. Oh, I know. The t-shirts that were being shot out here in the backyard area for the beachhead, the black and white masthead logo was designed, if I recall correctly, by Bill Olive. The color one later was designed by Bryce Woods. Okay, I think that's kind of the major stuff that I wanted to mention at this time. Silly, I know, but I'm going to shoot just tiny bits of my sack from docenting, etc., with the Friends of Bayona Wetlands, and then, of course, the Audubon Society, which was given the initial 305 acres to be the docents for. After the initial 305 acres were saved of the Bayona wetlands, of which the remaining canals were dug out of, and actually the original canals of Abercrombie. This is a poster. I'm going to shoot a couple of the posters, but it tells the plant names very nicely. I have several posters. I'll just shoot a couple of them. Of course, Mary Thompson did this, and her paintings, which were very idealistic but wonderful. But this is a wonderful little book that she did, etc. Here's a draft of things. Of course, these so-called grades of the ocean waters here are absolutely ridiculous, because they only test for about 3 things, and they do that very minimally as it is. The DWP, the Southern California Gas, the Southern California Electric, the Metropolitan Water District are all completely, well, the CPUC of the state of California and all of its derivatives are completely crimes and sins. Tim Rudnick has this on the pier, kind of he calls it the Venice Oceanarium, and he has an organization for it. And they do it. They didn't do it during the major COVID. Today is still in the COVID era, but we are not quite as going the dictums. There are many dictums. War is the biggest business, and medicine is its glove. Not that there's not been a pandemic, but I used to save seeds also, among other things, from the wetlands that we think of. The wetlands that we're speaking of are south of here in the Playa del Rey, but they are highly involved with the remaining wetlands that we have here that, of course, the fortressers and the powers that be squander and squalor like mad. This was about 2001, 2002, when the freshwater marsh was finally really being done with the Friends of Biola Wetlands and other people, because we slaved to cut back the Playa Vista situation, which had several names to it, which is now at Jefferson and Lincoln. And they asked me to be part of the team to get that properly done with proper balancing of nature things, etc. But by the second meeting, they realized they don't want anything to do with me. I have nothing to do with power. And I always have some critical thinking about how to do things better, and actually they are better, and they're less costly, but it's the way things are. So now, of course, it's just a huge area for massive amounts of so-called homeless, some of whom aren't really homeless, some of whom are homeless, but the situations are completely disastrous and unsafe and unhealthy for all life, actually. I'm going to shoot a few more things. Today is what? Today is the 3 of May 2022 at Bobby's Carroll Canal. I should mention, of course, Ruth Lansford, her husband, and many others, but she and Mary were the core people for me, for the Friends of Biola Wetlands. I think it started in 78, but I remember meeting with them and doing things in 76. But by 78 for sure. These are some of the little sheets we would have the microscopes with the Audubon Society, with the school groups or other special groups, but mostly it was school groups, usually from like age 8 and up, sometimes younger, but it's harder for them to use the microscopes well, even with help. And of course they're limited. We have to do them in sets with the microscopes and the plants, etc. Tim's oceanarium, of course, is much more modern. It was way after this kind of things, etc. And then, of course, it's become 3 different sections of saving the rest of the Biola wetlands, when none of those people would help before, like the Sierra Club and then the etc. I'm going to shoot a couple more posters, etc. Perhaps I should mention that the Playa Vista that exists now, which took decades to occur, but it took decades to cut it back. And the Friends of Biola Wetlands that I also worked with really led that effort. It was huge. Not that we didn't, some of us like me over here in the remaining Venice Canals work, but I really worked at it. And so it's cut back by, I'm going to say, 2/3 of what it was originally to be. It was just, well, everything is insane, but it was insane. So here is a poster that was a more modern poster long ago of the coast, with some of the seabirds. There's a little Venice area and the canal area, and then the wetlands. These were the original wetlands that were saved of the 350. There are more being saved now through the state situation, etc. The Coastal Commission, the Coastal Commission, 1972, is that when we did it? Which has been, CCC, like Central Communist Committee. I mean, California Coastal Commission has been, don't ask. But Rim Thay was really very important, and although we each have our own failures, when he left several years ago now, well, in 2008, actually 2007, and his memorial at the beach with the lifeguards, like including Harold Dunnigan, etc., it was wonderful. But it really did him in. And then the so-called Ballona Lagoon, which is the Grand Canal of the remaining Venice Canals, that redo, even though Eileen Weiss tried her best and then she left the world also, it just became institutionalized, and Rim's drinking just went off the wall when they just did so much horribleness there on the Grand Canal. But the canals are completely fortressed and polluted and controlled for property values, etc. A day at the beach. Well, we have 200 million dogs, at least in California, for quite some decades. Shit, pee, diarrhea, vomit, skin, hair, fur diseases. The drugs they're kept on excreted, not to mention all the treats crap. The dogs did not make the problem of this. People have made the problem. Then we have all the claws and teeth and the constant attacks, of which I am victim of forever and ever, but I'm not the only one. These are just a few of the little titles that I pulled out here, etc. Here, a final phase of Ballona Lagoon restoration. It wasn't the final phase, but it was the building of this little trellis so people could view. People could view already from the road, but officialdom has to do what it does. On the agendas, and so the California Coastal Commission there, the meetings, and they're up and down the state. They're almost never in the area where they're going to be actually speaking and addressing things. It doesn't matter anyway. It's just like the city and the county and the state and the federal government. It's all big business. Well, you might hear the jets and the private planes and the constant fortress crews, but I also want to add that the oil wells of Venice, the canal areas especially, and that were quite in existence when I came here in 1966, etc. But no, not one penny from those businesses of multiple companies ever was put back into Venice. And of course, Los Angeles took over Venice, well, after the so-called 25 October vote of 1925, but so much for that. At any rate, the oil wells, people like me felt those oil wells had to go, or that had to be something coming directly back to Venice, which also had to do with also the same thing with the film companies, and that only some bits come back, very little, in the last recent, I'm going to say decade, at the most for films. At any rate, the Grand Canal going south is the Ballona Lagoon, or the Ballona Lagoon area. And then as to oil wells in the ocean, or on the ocean, so those oil wells got taken out. The last ones, I have tons of photos of, especially of the canals, and the Damson one out from, oh gosh, what's the next street up? From Market Street out on the ocean. Those were all taken out. The last couple were from the Southern California Gas Company, which didn't get out until the end of 2001 or mid-2002, but I have photos. This is, and people like me also helped to I did not found it, but it became SOB, Save Our Beaches, or Save Our Bay, so that there would be no offshore oil drilling, like in Santa Barbara and other places. Well, and the oil wells just south of here. At any rate, this is a book. The idea was from Mary Lou Johnson, script Jeff Taub, art Michael Kielander. At any rate, I have a number of these. Maybe they could do something to pay for the medical bills of 70 grand. But I just want to put this forth, etc. And of course it's based on, which I will say, which is not politically correct, the Spanish coming here to this hemisphere. But it's a pretty incredible comic book, etc. And it has a lot to do with not eating meat or killing animals a lot, etc. I'm going to shoot these. These will be out of sequence, I do believe, and they'll be part of something else, perhaps quite so. These are some of the last of the children's books that I love, that I could not part with and have kept in storage. And of course I have to clear everything out and get rid of everything, etc. for the storage, because I can't afford it. Hans Brinker and the Silver Skates, Hans Christian Andersen, the Blue book, Child's Garden of Verses by Stevenson, The Real Mother Goose by Many, The Better Homes and Gardens Storybook, which is wonderful, the story of Babar, the little elephant, The Land of Oz, a sequel to The Wizard of Oz, The Wizard of Oz, The Wind in the Willows, Tale of Samuel Whiskers, A Tale of Ginger and Pickles, although there were more of these that I had the powders of. Anglin's A Pocket Full of Proverbs here. Wind, Sand and Stars, Antoine de Saint-Exupéry. And these little books, I think there were 6 actually, but I can only find 5. Nursery Rhymes, Little Poetry Book, Nursery Rhymes number 2, Tongue Twisters, Little Riddle Book. There will be more to come in this kind of series. Today's the 6th of May, 2022. These are just more things of youth and things that were involved with the children, books, that things. And of course, I think my first poetry book, other than considered the classic children's. I can't find Johnny Crow's Garden book yet. I don't quite know where it is. It must be in my other things, not just in the book things. This is my favorite garden book, period. It's my favorite one for general people. And of course, then we get over into play books, and that's a Truman Capote book, although it's not the plays of, but I do his plays, the plays of J.M. Barrie. And this is something of myself, by Rudyard Kipling, Sean O'Casey, The Third River Carnival, etc. I'll shoot a few more books. I wish I'd brought all the medical books, but I'm going to shoot them separately. I, of course, have given to the Venice Library close to 5,000 books. A few of those were records of albums. I gave lots of albums to Susie Williams and Jerry Fiolka and Brad Kay and Mark Farino. When was that? 2014. I gave them tons of albums. And of course, a vast majority of the wonderful art books and so much more that I gave to the Venice Library for the new library, the old library in Venice, was wonderful. Were placed, so they were very small books, but there were lots of fabulous art books. And here are a few more, so to speak, coloring books, etc., for youths, which I've held on to. That are quite wonderful in their ways, actually. Here's a booklet on the Monterey Aquarium. Of course, I used to live for a very short time just up the little tiny streets from it in Pacific Grove long ago. For a short time in my life. And an excellent book on Indians in California. And the two books that I gathered when I was actually quite young and never really used because there were no arts for women or sports really for women. But I've held on to them. Now maybe I would have time to learn to do this kind of thing. I'm too busy to deal with the books themselves. They're pretty incredible. Among my many years of working with G. Ray Hawkins Gallery from its very beginning, and the beginning was with Ansel Adams' exhibit, I think it was late 1974. The Man Ray exhibit was quite enormous, to say the least. At one point I garnered 300 volunteers to help with putting together the massive kinds of memorabilia that we did. I actually have a sack of memorabilia also, but that's not here right now. I have it in another place, etc. And of course the Scavullo, and we did an Avedon exhibit also. The Scavullo was quite incredible. Here's a Jane Corcoran huge catalog. Joel Meyerowitz we did lots of, etc. Max Yavno, of course, quite a bit. Took care of him with all the many people I've taken care of also for many decades, etc. Some of the San Francisco images. Ruth Bernhardt's a catalog for her work, and an historical survey, Women of Photography, San Francisco Museum of Art. These are a few of the things that I have left. And here's a Xerox of a little review of G. Ray's, and Max and Ansel Adams and Helmut Newton, Scavullo. Gary Leonard took these photos. He also took the photo that I have of a kiss from Scavullo during the soiree, the Grand Gala of his exhibit. After I dressed up, after slaving with the crew, etc., and David Fahey and so forth and so on. Two other books that we did here. Phil Borges' Tibetan Portrait did big benefits with him. also, and Gordon Parks. I think we did a couple of exhibits of his. Also, this is likely out of sequence. Also, I will have to edit this into other things, but this will begin some books on Venice. I think this came out in 75. And our house at 438 Carroll Canal, where we were, and 441st, there on the left. Page 63 is here. This is before the, of these remaining canals, before the ruination project of 92 to 95. See if I can find the other page. 30. And here's the back door of our cottage of 438 Carroll Canal. This is a very good book, actually. Here's my book on Venice, so to speak, which is huge. It regards the second 50 years of Venice, and it's quite massive, and I have about 115 of pen and ink drawings, besides black and white photographs of mine in this book. Here's the reverse of it, so to speak, and John and Barbara computerized it all, but I actually designed it in this as to how it's to be laid out, besides all the illustrations and writing and editing and self-publishing, etc. Here's a little Xerox of reduced, of course, from the Free Venice Beachhead newspaper, which the first issue was December 1968. But the landmark status, Tom Moran, that really did it. I helped. It was my third or fourth time to really work on it. But the other efforts, and as being the damned person that I am, it was never proper, and it was a big group effort. But Tom Moran was the perfect person as a fabulous writer, and who has written many books and taught writing for decades. He worked on it for years, so that by July 15th, 1983, the remaining Venice Canals by the City of Los Angeles were approved for cultural historical landmark status. Here's Tom's book, Fantasy by the Sea, which is also wonderful. Quite wonderful, to say the least. Here is Arnold Springer made a foundation for Ulaanbaatar, for Mongolia, really, and he has lots of funding, etc. But he also was a professor at Long Beach and had massive help with the students' helps there. There are a number of writings in here. This was out in 1992. And he did a number of these also. I've spoken of his other book that he did just before he died. Here are some papers of things that, oh boy, from the Temple of Man. Mailings that I've kept somehow. And of course that was its first home, 1439. Cabrillo or Cabrillo, depends on where you come from, is how you want to say that, etc. And Marcia Getzler, the temple went to Marcia Getzler's house. An incredible place up the steeps. The temple, of course, is at Beyond Baroque, George W. Smith's foundation, and that's where it is now. Well, the temple is within you. I mean, the shrine was also at Marcia's, after it was also at Bazanita's Robert Alexander's and Anita's home at 1439 Cabrillo in Venice, California. I'm shooting some more books. Each of them would be an enormous history. The art tiles at Venice Beach, when they redid some of the so-called benches along the oceanfront walk, of course, the city of Los Angeles is just hell on wheels. At any rate, the book has many problems in it, and it has tiny little text on the left side page, and then a picture of the tiles. Noel Osheroff and Tammy, and also, and Emily, I think, did one also, and someone else. But the book is problem. This one is of Rick's. This one's of Rick's. The calendar, obviously 1978, and of course he left us way too early in 2001, December 2021. These are two calendars that are sponsored and set up by Betsy Goldman. Betsy sells Venice, real estate person, and also this is her huge contribution. There are many calendars that she's done mostly with Paul. I'm going to forget his last name now, and Stephen Puglio, and they're quite wonderful. This is Emily's Colorful History of Venice coloring book, and it's taken mostly from photographs. There's one that toward the Jaya, and this is one, so to speak, from a photo that Rick took, I think, probably in my backyard at 438 Carroll Canal. This would be Mike Marfori playing, etc. And these are books. They had ceramics on the top. This was the book that John Ransom, Barbara Mustad, did for Bob's memorial. And Joan and Bob are just crucial here, and most everywhere. And he was an artist, but mostly a sculptor. And he left on I think it was the 30th of March, 2001, and went to heaven. Joni, of course, left on the 14th of January, 2021. Oh, here's a book of one-liners by Rick, also, which I love. Here is a copy of course, Ray Bradbury, Fahrenheit 451, who also lived in Venice, on Venice Boulevard, and actually elsewhere, another toward the beach more. This is the book by Sonia Reese Greenland Davis, family historian Arthur Reese, who is the Wizard of Venice and who came to work for Abbot Kinney, who founded Villa City, which became to be known as Venice, California, among many other things. And Arthur Lloyd Reese. So he married a Tabor girl. And then all the Tabor family came out here and began working, and they worked with Reese and then set up their own businesses also. But Reese is staggeringly important here, and so is the Tabor family. And of course I did several, for me, major events regarding the Tabor family, which is inclusive, of course, of Reese. It's just that the Reese family, all 22 of them, came out with the children and or had children here. And I did in 2011 a major, huge event at our Pacific Resident Theater honoring the family for 100th, which it should have been done earlier. I'd wanted to do it in 2010, but Novelette Bailey, although they spell her name wrong all the time, the family does it too, but Navi was quite clear to me in my many years of knowing her, and although she knew Betsy also extremely well, It's novelette, as in a short novel. And of course, they were all from Louisiana and based highly also in New Orleans. And Reese, of course, started the Mardi Gras here, among many other things. And his artisticness and craftsmanship was crucial here. So this is a wonderful book by her. There are a couple of books here from our Orson Bean, who of course left here way too early, although he was no young chicken, as we say. Born in 1928, but he left very suddenly on the 7th of February, 2020. Here are two leftovers from Target LA and Auntie Nuke, which we did in one of the many years, also working especially with Mary Lou Johnson, for commemorate for No More War and for ending nuclear blah blahs, because of Hiroshima and Nagasaki. At any rate, and I was quite involved with all of them, but also this one is immensely. I have the map, a poster that we did of it also, but I don't have it with me right here. And that year it was quite wonderful. It was always in August, of course. This is a wonderful map of Venice by Jeffrey Stanton, and of course he it's as his huge book, which he's had updates on, Venice, the Coney Island of America. And this opens up into an actual map. And there were, I think that, hold on. Okay, so this was banned by the kind of Chamber of Commerce kind of people and other kind of organizations because they didn't like certain ways he represented certain neighborhoods. It's an incredible map, and his historian work, etc., is quite astounding. And the book is a huge resource, and he continues such in his older age, as we are all older. Oh, I wanted to show one of Joni's 4 mystery novels also that she wrote quite some years before she went to heaven in 2020. This is Jerry Fialka, who is some people say impresario, but he likes to talk and discuss, although the discussion is the point. And this is a translation, or what do you call it, a written way of some of his interviews with people. He interviewed moi in 2012 at some point at the Unurban Cafe, and he continues that a lot. He and Susie came to work with the current beachhead situation, the Free Venice Beachhead newspaper, of course, that John Haig thought of, and Rick Davidson took on, and Rick Davidson being extremely crucial to this entire arena, and John Haig beyond also. And they both have left this planet some years back now. I'm showing this, it's just one of the scripts that I have from Barbara Avedon, who lived here in Venice also, and I have the original poster, the first one that I had, I think was 1965, maybe 66, and I have a newer one that we produced from Another Mother for Peace, War is Not Healthy for Children and Other Living Things, that we did for her memorial. I can't even remember what year it was now. Oh Lord, was it 92? Might have been 90. And of course she became a very successful writer in the business of television and even film, but television especially. And here, I wish I had the photos of Daryl's here, but this is just a little poetry booklet he did. Daryl Golden is, again, beyond imagination, and a fabulous, fabulous artist in everything that he did. And he left the world in 1996. This world, not the world. Here are 4 little of my poetry booklets that I did over quite some years. I think I did 5. And now I'm going to try and shoot some hints of things from Temple of Man, although I am of that. John and Barbara are. My big book, A Seashore Memoir, for Venice's 100th, all black and white, is of that also. And this also involves George Drury Smith, who is the founder and still quite with us at 95 and a half, of Beyond Baroque, the largest small press library also in this nation of the United States of America, as some people say it. So here we are with George Drury Smith's first big book, so to speak, The Slant Hog of Time. It's quite wonderful, and I began it when I first got it from him several years ago, was before his 90th, I think. And which I did a city certificate for him for his 90th in 2017, of the 10th of March. I began it in the middle, and it was just fabulous. I went to and fro. The whole thing just reads beautifully, no matter where you start, stop, return, turn about, U-turn, it's fine, it's wonderful. And he founded, of course, Beyond Baroque in 1968. I met him in that January, as I recall, at 1639 West Washington, which in modern decades is called Abbot Kinney Boulevard. Papa Bach had a wonderful run of several years of doing all kinds of writings, etc., and images in their publication. And here, look, 1977, Beyond Baroque Foundation publication, not for sale, etc. So this is the one that I've kept. Now we're going to get photographing the LA art scene. There are many books around this situation, but this one is by Craig Kroll. And of course, he is my favorite gallery owner person, and up at Bergamo Station in Santa Monica for some decades now. Philomene Long and John Thomas, of course, and I had their picture in my book, A Seashore Memoir. I took of them before I did the book. A few years before I did the book, I took that. And she has a video I've never seen called The Beats. I don't know when that was done, but I'm going to say 1966, 68. I did have it copied, but I haven't onto a disc, but I haven't seen it. Frank Rios, and of course Tony Sabella. And the 4 of them are quite incredible. And of course, Robert, or Bob Alexander, and his wife Anita, and Bob founded the Temple of Man, of which these people are part here. And the Temple of Man just had its 60th. He founded it in 1960. He actually did the paperwork in San Francisco, but they were absolutely here. Well, he was here by age 10 or 11. And their house was at, also, 1439, Cabrillo or Cabrillo. This is another of the Black Ace that mostly Tony started, but with the Temple of Man. Here are a couple of small things. This one was done in 2007 for Philomene's memorial time. It was done by her twin sister Pegerty, who is still in this world with us. This is a wonderful booklet for an exhibit by Martine Vogel, who is maybe my favorite modern sculptor, and or was, I don't know if she's still in this world, and Jan Seidler, who was quite incredible. And the studio was in the old firehouse at Main and Rose Avenue in Venice. Another Black Ace, and of course the three of the Ferlinghetti books also. And then these two color paper, orange and blue, were by Claire Horner. And I met him when my first improv group, after working some months with the committee workshop at the Tiffany Theater on Sunset Boulevard in 1968. And G. Ray suggested we have a group, and we called it The Mask, M-A-S-Q-U-E, and we did improv at Attica. Where was it? Was it Bay? Strand? No, Bay, maybe. And Main Street in Santa Monica. And we did that pretty much weekly for quite some time. And that Claire Horner would come. And I acquired these books from him then. Here's a book by S.A. Griffin, whom I love. And this is a more modern one of Temple of Man people, of which he is crucial to. And he's a wonderful poet and writer also. Here is a book on Charles Britton, and of course I did exhibits with Charles Britton, and the Getty has his estate, so to speak, although other people have his works. And he's highly related to Bob and Anita and Wally Berman and this group. Here are a couple of the Griot books of writings and poetry, which are highly from Rick Davidson, Larry Abrams, and many others actually. And of course, Rick being his great political person. I'm just including this because it's something of someone who's more famous in the media world, of Mike Farrell and his activism work besides all his television and film work. But somehow it seems very apropos again now. We've got this, well, we have wars all the time, and our country has led bazillions of them. But there's a huge invasion of the Ukraine area, etc., by the Russian powers be, I can't say by the Russian populace. And there's huge work to deal with helping people all around the world, but especially all over Europe now, and other places that are taking in the massive, massive survivors and refugees that can trying to survive and be out of the onslaught of war. I think that's going to be it for the books. There are many, many more, but that's it for now. Well, not quite true. Did I say that, yes, I worked with Charles during the exhibits, but I did huge exhibits on Venice. Here's Bob Alexander, and there's Wally, etc. And here, what is it, Josh? At any rate, he did much work, and my exhibits included him in 1995 and 2000 that I did massively at the Venice Library, and for months and months, along with many, many events at the library and at some other locations in those years. Oh, and the Tabor family, yes, I did took many, many, many months of big work for me to get down to one sheet, a huge 100th anniversary city resolution that I wrote, well, I instigated, arranged, slaved, wrote. But there are the the videos on my YouTube of Venice documentaries. And so one of them is the 100th anniversary of the Tabor family. I did it in 2011. I had hoped to have it in 2010. The entire family was out here by 1922. But they were started to come out here right after Arthur Reese had let them know to get out here. So I'm not sure when they first arrived, other than Arthur, who was already here in this area by 1902. I do want to add, here's a little image of the Reese home at 541 Santa Clara at 6th Street. Across the street is the moved in 3 sections by the Tabor brothers, several of them, that was left to Irving Tabor by Abbott Kinney and his wife Margaret, the entire home, which was on the center of the Venice Canals. I can't find a picture of that, of course, right now. At the Windward Circle, well, it's called Windward now, and I can't find it. As 1310 6th Street. It was sold by the family some years ago, but it is an historical site. Sonia and I highly agree, of course, and the artifacts and everything shows Venice was a very integrated town with all cultures and colors and of people and beliefs, etc., from its very beginning, because that's how Kinney lived, for one thing. And in fact, the Monday Club, a little club in the so-called Oakwood area, is built from the garages of the, which of course were, carriage garages, in Venice, in the original canal system, which does not exist anymore. The city of Los Angeles cemented it all in. But at the house at 1310 6th Street was moved because the city of Los Angeles, some years after Kinney's death, said that he couldn't have it. It was a matter of racial discrimination and other things. So Kinney could not control the state, and he certainly couldn't control Los Angeles, and he had left this world in 1920. So, and it had opened up officially in 1905, although it took some time to build. That area where it was on the canal area of the Venice Circle, facing west, and which has the so-called post office moved to that area. But when I came here in '66, it had the Safeway grocery store, which we called then a supermarket, and now it would be just a market. I want that area, the entire lottage of that and home of the Kinneys, which was left to the Tabor family, to Irving Tabor specifically, to be a joyous little area. I want that post office out of there. They moved our post office against all things. They sold the work project post office and the mural situation in it on the other side of the circle this way, to someone, of course, is as corrupt as the government. And so it's been sitting there vacant, and as far as I'm concerned, the post office can move back to it. And I want that other area across, facing west, to be an area in homage of Reese, Tabor, who else? Kinney, Reese, Tabor, and Freeth, George Freeth, who came from Hawaii because Kinney brought him here, and who died and saving people for years and years along this coast from Hawaii. It's been very crucial, also the influence of Hawaii in Venice, but on this entire coast and for this nation. And Freeth is really the father of lifeguarding as we think of it at all, and even invented things that initially were very helpful to people. And of course, that what we call now the Will Rogers State Beach area, near Sunset, near Temescal Canyon, at the coast, he saved so many Japanese fishermen in an impossible storm way back when. And there was the Japanese people put up a monument to him there, which has been gone for a long time. He died down toward, Huntington, because he also went down to do the lifeguarding situations, etc., down in Huntington. And he died that, and he was awarded, I think it was in 1910, the highest civic honor from the President and the Congress of the United States. But I want that area to be in honor of Kenny, Reese, Tabor, and Freeth. And not that the women are not important. The women are extremely important and crucial. But in those days, those were the men who had the legal rights to do certain things and the ability to do them. And they did great good. And so did their wives. Oh, and the garages went to the Monday Club, which is in Oakwood. Margaret, Kenny's wife, donated those for that. When I'm upside down like this, the nasal drip goes nasal. So that's the way it is. But in my book, on my many, many things, in my 2005 massive book, the photos are mine also, besides all the ink illustrations. Here's the picture that I took of the Kenny Tabor house at 1310 6th Street, which is kitty corner from the Reese house at 541 Santa Clara. But that's the one I want back there at the so-called Venice Circle, since all those canals are filled in, etc. I also wanted to mention, in Tom's book, there were 6 parks, and I won't go into all of them, but finally the 4th one at the corner at Dell and on City Lot, Dell and Sherman Canal, that was torn down. That was the umpteenth. Well, the first 2 were torn down. The 3rd one on a private lot, that was finally the community house, and that's a whole nother story, and I have pictures, and it's in the home movies, etc., and on the YouTube, Mary Jane's Venice History Tapes, of which there are 18 documentaries, but there will be many more if I can get them together these next couple of years. I have the footages. But, and there's a nanny park they call it the Linney Canal Park now. That was the 6th park. But this was the 5th one. These parks were initially, and this building was by Abe Osheroff, who is long gone from our planet, and was much older than I. But this one was so well built, and I think it was the 3 of January of 73, I could have the date wrong, that in the middle of the night, because the city tried to tear this one down also, it was so well built. It's at Howland Canal at the Dell Bridge, so it was just on that side. They brought in helicopters and huge cranes to remove this, because they couldn't remove it. And the public outcry was huge, not just from the locals and us for the canals, etc., but because Ken Jewett came, and another photographer, but from the Evening Outlook, etc., and the Examiner. These are the only 2 photos that I know of it. I have the posters, of course, at the canal festivals, and there was an image of it for the canal festival in later that year. But it was a big deal, and we were building vest pocket parks. We tried to do that. So this was a huge ordeal, etc. And then we built, me quite involved again, for the little one at Venice Canal at Dell. When that was finally allowed and done, etc., did I show the cover of Tom's book again? I think I did. It was allowed only to be a year and maybe 3, so several of us, myself included, really slaved with the so-called Los Angeles City Council, yikes, again, and got it in perpetuity, whatever that might mean in the world or Los Angeles. So it's what I call the concubine nanny park, but it serves them very well, and I'm glad that it does, besides the occasional yuppies with their children there, but it's in constant use. Of course, they've had to put up signs like no dogs, duh, and of course many of them take their dogs anyway. And this was the article that I had arranged and provided information for, etc., for the city certificate that I had done for March 2014 for Tom when he came back out here to visit. And this was in the Argonaut. So this was the week before, it comes out on Thursdays, before the 13th, 14th. I presented it at Joni's house on the 13th to Tom and Marilyn and the group of us, John and Barbara and Joni, myself, Helen and Bert, somebody else. And then on the 14th at Beyond Baroque. Here's a little reduced Xerox of one of my drawings, of the drawing of Pacific Resident Theater. This is highly reduced, of course, and it's a copy, so to speak. Here's, if it can show it all, this is the 8.5 by 14. I call it a comic strip that Rick Sinatra did of me in freezing water. Freezing. I think it was 56 degrees maximum, although I had been used to up north way before, even at 44 in the winter, but this could have been 52 degrees. And this was in December, this was shot, so it was my Christmas card to people. And Frank Talbot has taken so many photos of us, of me, also, as Rick did, and Daryl Gold and other people, even Charles Britton somewhat later. But these are small images on the 1964 also, still, Jacob's 9-foot 6-inch board, as that is. Here are a few copies of Maine magazine that I've kept. I have so many archives I can't possibly, there's tons. Of course, I have the Venice magazine also, and Wet. And here's the first issue of the Beachhead, 1968. Here's one in 1975, and my wonderful son, David, there, at the lagoon. In his statements of wanting to save Venice and the canals, etc. Of course, I have all the festivals. I did a first festival by myself that the majority of the public, per se, activists didn't know about. And then we did festivals 69, 70, 71, 72, 73, 74, 75 I let, because of the complaints that I wasn't doing it the way they wanted, even though it took 8 months a year. Trying to show some of these. Oh, here, this one is for hopefully getting Ruth Galanter in. Pat Russell was the council person for a long time. This was to vote for Ruth Galanter. Not that any of this makes any difference. Osuma was one of the many names before Playa Vista. This paper is a poem. Yes, it is. I gave a full collection of the Beachheads in 2003 and finishing up in 2005 through Venice's 100th to the Southern California Library for Social Research, a full set of the Beachheads, and many archives to them on Vermont near 62nd Street. Oh, I wanted to say Paul Tank is the person that has headed up the calendars that Betsy does from her real estate. Betsy Sells Venice. He does them there for her Paul Tank. I couldn't remember his last name earlier, of course. And for fun, also in Tom's book, one of the last photos, not the last, is the roller skating revival. And my son was quite crucial to it, although there were other people that were crucial to it. And I won't remember all the names of the people in this photo, but here's my son and Beth, who actually, from pollutions, etc., lost her legs and then lost her life. Here's Jeannie. This isn't Skeeter. It's another man. I can't remember his name. So this was mostly in 1979. This photo was taken. It's with the Smithsonian. And, of course, this is in the home movies. The Venice, Los Angeles Fine Arts Squad did many murals, but this one, of course, Venice in Snow. And as I said before, I think in another take in this home movie situation, it did snow 4 times when the children were very young. And these are the remaining canals, as you know. Those initial canals of Venice City, and then called Venice, California, were filled in by the city of Los Angeles after the annexation, which was October 1925. And 1927, 1929, they were filled in. Well, these few things were with the beachhead, so I'm just shooting them again. Here's the bigger program for Target LA in 1983. These are covers of Rolling Stone. Here, of course, Peace and Freedom stickers. We used to put them on vehicles, etc., other places. And Rick Davidson, Marge Buckley, but also John Haig, who founded the Peace and Freedom Party, and I did sign that and worked with it because I like to have choices, and the powers that be are not always enough choices. Here's another Rolling Stone cover. Actually, it's an issue, and this one also is an issue, and this one also is an issue, and that one also is an issue. And then there are a few covers that I kept, but I've kept many covers. I have a box of covers of magazines, which actually are wonderful, from the late 60s and through the early 70s, because I couldn't keep the whole magazines. And of course our wonderful Cassius Clay, Muhammad Ali, beyond imagination, as we all are. So I'll put these away. I think that's going to be it. Here's the canal plaque. 1983, July 15th was the vote of the City Council of Los Angeles, so to speak. But Tom's work also included, in 82, it was declared nationally and statewide. Here is a little paper, small copy from our beachhead for the landmark status of the canals, the article that I wrote for our beachhead. Then in 1983, of course this was September. I have to shoot this quickly. Today's the 23rd of May, 2022. And I have to shoot in between all the dogs' commandos. That's the way it goes. And this is just Sherman Canal right here where that plaque is.